My name is Lillian. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who are everything to me. And what I'm going to report today happened to me a few years ago. Since I was a teenager, almost every night I had the same dream. But it wasn't just a repeated dream. It was more like a nightmare. I woke up scared and was afraid to go back to sleep. In the dream, I was going down a street with a very high wall. That's when I saw a gate that led to a huge cemetery. I went in and looked at the headstones, where there were all children of different ages. I became curious when I heard a baby cry. The further I walked, the further the exit became, and the clearer the baby's crying became, until I saw a child in a diaper crying on top of a grave, waving her arms and legs. I ran to try to help her, but when I arrived, I saw a deformed child. I can't explain how horrible it was to look at. In the dream, I couldn't get the baby. That's when I saw my aunt, who was still alive, and who, by the way, appeared from behind the grave and said, "What are you waiting for? Won't you take your child in your arms?" I was horrified. She took my arm and tried to make me put my hand on the baby. I screamed and started to run. The more I ran, the more the crying increased, but I still couldn't get out for some reason. I ran and ran between the decrepit graves, crying, and that agonized scream accompanied me. When I saw the gate, my aunt appeared in front of it with the baby in her arms. At that moment, I always woke up sweaty, desperate, and crying. I spent the day with that baby's cry in my head, and that was how it was for years. I always had a real panic to say that one day I would have a child, until I got pregnant at 20. I tried not to think about the nightmare and tried to pray a lot, asking God for my child to be healthy. I realized during pregnancy that the nightmare didn't appear anymore. I was glad the torment of the night was over. My son was born perfect, with great health, while happiness reigned at home. The years went by, and I didn't remember that dream anymore, until one day. My son was 3 years old, and I got pregnant with my second child. But at 5 months, the ultrasound showed that he was going to be born with deformities. My world collapsed. The best thing the doctor said to do was to terminate the pregnancy, but I refused. I couldn't believe it, because my son was part of me. A few weeks went by, and I woke up screaming and crying. The nightmare had come back, and this time much stronger. When I woke up, I was in huge agony, and that's when I realized that I was bleeding. I ran to the bathroom and ended up losing my baby. It was traumatic, and to this day, I don't understand what happened. But the life that followed, the nightmare stopped, and I was living my life in peace. Until my son was in a corner of the house, playing and talking to someone. I walked over and asked who he was talking to, and he replied, "You can't see, Mummy? It's my brother." I felt butterflies in my stomach. I tried to let it go. I thought he was imagining things, since the loss of my pregnancy was difficult for him, because he really wanted a brother. I picked him up and talked, but he insisted he was watching and talking to his brother. I called his attention not to say these things, because it wasn't funny and I didn't like it. So he shut up, and I took him to bed, as it was already past 10 p.m. When I was leaving the room, he asked me the following question. "Mummy, because my brother has a crooked face, he said I'm bothering you, and he loves you a lot more than I do. But Mummy, it's not true, because I love you so much more than anyone in the world." I hugged him, but his words bothered me deeply. I left the room feeling like I was being watched. I woke up a few hours later, hearing someone running around the house. I thought it was my son, who had gotten up. I looked at the door and saw a figure passing fast. I lost sleep instantly. My body shuddered and a shiver came over me. I got up running and saw when he entered where my son was sleeping. The lamp was on, and I ran into the bedroom, and that's when I saw a boy with sunken eyes looking at my son. I felt my blood freeze and despair seized me. That being looked at me without expression and said,
"I'm your son, you know."
His face instantly changed and he glared at my sleeping son. I took my son out of bed. He woke up scared and I ran with him to the exit door. That's when I heard a very strange voice saying,
"Don't leave me here."
My dog barked a lot and I was in a state of terror. I didn't get the keys and there was no way to open the door. I got a towel that was on the clothesline and I wrapped my son because he was cold that dawn. I tried to calm him down and with a lot of effort he slept on my lap. I sat there with him and my dog beside him looking at the house. In the morning, his father arrived and I explained what happened. He didn't believe me, but he knew I wouldn't be outside the house for no reason with the boy. We entered the house. Everything looked the same. I called my grandmother and told her what had happened. She said a very strong prayer and told me to calm down and go to church and light a candle for the child that was mine that couldn't leave me. I did what she asked and I confessed that nothing else happened. Today my son is 14 years old and doesn't remember this story. I had also forgotten until a few weeks ago when I saw a dark shadow around my son.